All right, we're going to look now at the seated hamstring curl. In particular, we're using the Life Fitness pin-loaded version, but a lot of the principles are the same in many of the machines now. Always first things first, we've got to get those foundations right, we've got to get that set up, nailed down. So you'll see that before we've even done anything here, Mal has already kind of lined up her knee, her patella with the axis of the machine. Now here it's really easily noticeable because we'll get that big black circle where the machine axis of rotation is. However, other machines might signify that in a different way, and other machines it might not be so obvious. Just make sure that you've looked at where that machine rotates and ensure that that patella, that knee joint is lined up with that. Once we've sorted that out, now Mal's already set this up for her. Most of these machines will have like a height axis, so where you can adjust how much hip flexion that you're actually going to start from as far as where you know, the feet and the legs are. Now, what I would encourage you not to do is make sure that you don't force yourself into an end range of hip flexion that you're not comfortable with. It feels really nervy before you start even doing anything. That's probably too much. The next thing we've then looked at is the replacement pad, is how high up do we put it now? There's no right or wrong here. Obviously we don't want it contacting the actual heel or the back of the foot, but there will be times in your programming where we might have it much closer to the ankle and times we might move it a little bit closer to the knee. But we've already set that up for Mal's individual goal at this point in time. So then from there, she's going to take this support pad, she's going to put it down. Now she's not going to overly force it into position, she's going to put it into a point where it's going to provide a brace, but she's not like crushing her legs and forcing it down into that position. It just puts way too much stress on potentially the knees or on the tissues as well. Now from there, other things we're looking at here is, for some people, they may feel a bit more comfortable pulling themselves up a little bit into a little bit more hip flexion, whereas for others, they're going to feel far more comfortable leaning right back onto the seat. Then from there, we finally get into the exercise. So execution-wise, Mal's going to hold onto the handles here, and you've got a couple of options. You can either hold onto these and drive your quads up into here, or some people actually prefer to have one hand under and one hand on top. It's whatever allows you to feel like you can get the maximum bracing potential out of the exercise while you're doing it. From there, Mal's then going to think about keeping the feet in a neutral position. She's not over flexing, overextending, so that doesn't really make a difference to how the hamstrings function. She's keeping this in a comfortable position for her. She's then going to flex at the knee, and while she does that, she's almost thinking about like doubling down on driving the legs up into this support pad here so that she can maximize the amount of tension she can really drive down through this placement pad. Now you'll notice as well that she's controlling that endpoint really, really well, and she's controlling this endpoint well as well. Now, in some of our client programs, we may bias this range by holding here for longer, and in other client plans, we might bias this range for holding here longer. But one thing that's common through all of the hamstring variations we do is that we are controlling both the lengthen range here and the shorten range here. Now, a couple of things we don't want is we don't want to be flinging the placement pad down and just banging it up and down, because then we're really not owning those endpoints and we're actually using potentially an unwanted amount of inertia or amount of momentum to actually get that movement done. Other things we see people do as well to do the movement is they'll start to almost arch the lower back to get into position. They'll start lifting their hips forward or trying to extend to get up. And you can see that if you saw that from the side, Mal's back is actually leaving the back pad here, which we don't want. Relax a second. So a couple more really good reps. She puts herself into the degree of hip flexion she's comfortable with. Quads are driving up into the placement pad while she drives the leg down, contracting the hamstrings as forcefully as she can and maintaining tension throughout the entirety of the movement.